July. Moscow, heat mixed with thunderstorm moisture. Domodedovo is buzzing like a beehive. The hum of engines, the smell of aviation kerosene, distant announcements on the speakers. An Airbus A310 with a blue and white stripe and the inscription Siberia is waiting in the parking lot under a gray sky. This plane is no longer new, but it is reliable, an old hard worker who has traveled dozens of routes across half the country. Today he will have a regular domestic flight, Moscow, Irkutsk. Flight 778. There is a stream of people at the ramp. Tired faces, suitcases, short conversations. Someone is in a hurry to go on vacation. Someone is returning home. Among them are children with headphones, a businessman with a folder under his arm, an elderly couple whose grandson is flying on an airplane for the first time. None of them knows that this evening the Domodedovo security camera will record them for the last time. The crew is preparing for flight. Commander Sergei Shibanov is 45 years old, strict, collected, with the character of a man who always keeps the situation under control. He's one of those pilots who doesn't take chances. We've got 10,611 hours in the sky, 1,000 on this type. He loves Airbus, but he knows this car forgives little. The co-pilot is Vladimir Chernik, 48 years old. A little older, calmer, restrained. He's the one who always pauses before making a decision. 9,971 hours in the air. Two people who trust each other without words. They are undergoing a pre-flight check. Electrics, fuel, management. Everything is normal. Sheet by sheet in the checklist are closed with green check marks. Only one line is highlighted in gray. Left reverse deactivated. This means that after landing, you will have to brake mainly with the right engine and wheels. In wet conditions, there is a risk, but not a critical one. On paper, everything is allowed and the plane is allowed to fly. The 1717. There are dispatcher commands in the headphones. Siberia 778, I authorize takeoff. Siberia 778, understood, we're taking off. Cravings increase. The turbines are humming. The concrete strip is shaking. There is a slight vibration in the cabin. The green light bulbs go out one by one. The plane is ready. 100, rotate. The co-pilot's voice sounds calm. Shibanov pulls the steering wheel towards himself. The plane gently pulls away from the runway and goes into the gray sky. There is a thick cloud cover behind the glass, but everything is according to plan inside. There are 203 people on board, 195 passengers, 8 crew members. The smell of coffee in the cabin, the rustle of magazines, the clicks of seat belts. For passengers, this moment is familiar. Takeoff, a slight pressure in the ears, and the city under the wing turns into a network of lights. There was a short silence in the cabin. Then a light conversation. Chernik marks the parameters on the dashboard. Shibanov checks the oil pressure and engine temperature. It's okay. Yes, we're flying like rails. Moscow is already behind us. The plane is gaining altitude, reaching cruising altitude. Behind the portholes, there is a dense blue haze and evening light, which is gradually fading. No one knows that at this moment, at an altitude of 11 kilometers, a chain of events has already begun, which in a few hours will turn into one of the most mysterious plane crashes in the history of Siberia. But so far, everything is perfect. Smooth flight, quiet negotiations with the dispatcher, confidence in the voices. Below them is an endless country, cities, rivers, and the taiga. Overhead, there was only the glow of instruments and the steady breathing of engines. And in this apparent harmony, the future contrast is already hiding. Order and chaos, experience and chance, iron and man. Siberia 778 follows the route. Quiet flight, the last one, which will end not in the sky, but on Earth. Outside the window is a soft blue. Sunlight splits through the glass of the cabin, turning into a uniform glow. The A310 is flying at an altitude of 11 kilometers. The speed is 850 kilometers per hour, and half of the route is already behind us. Moscow remained far to the west, with endless Siberia, the taiga ahead, and a route stretching all the way to Irkutsk. The cabin is quiet. Only the hum of the systems and the occasional conversation with the dispatchers. Siberia 778, Echelon 370, everything is fine. Acknowledged, hold course, estimated arrival 20:40. Routine words, like the breathing of an airplane. On autopilot, there is easy stabilization, all parameters are in the green zone. There are stable lines on the central screens. Pressure, RPM, temperature. The airliner seems to be living its own life, and the pilots are just watching without interfering. Shibanov checks the log. Chernik makes notes. Pause. Well, they promised rain by Irkutsk, the commander says, without looking up from the instruments. It's a wet streak again. The co-pilot grins. We will slow down with one reverse, like on skates. Shibanov grins back, but without alarm. He's used to it. He has thousands of landings under his belt. For him, a wet lane is just a slightly longer run, no more. The voices are calm. The intonation is even. Everything is under control. Even when they discuss the faulty left reverse, it's more ironic than apprehensive. Because the A310 is a reliable, understandable, and predictable partner for the crew. Almost always. While the liner is flying, life on board flows according to schedule. In the salon there is dinner, drinks, light above the chairs. Children are playing with headphones. Someone is dozing by the window. The pilots have a brief conversation with the flight attendants. Everything is calm. There is no turbulence. Outside, the night is thickening. The sky is darkening. The horizon is lost in a haze. Somewhere below, the glitter of rivers, the lights of rare villages. Time passes smoothly, as if in slow motion. 21:46. The crew reports to the Irkutsk Regional Center. The train is 11,100 meters. Arrival is 22:40. The dispatcher confirms. Proceed at level 370 to the point of descent. Copy that. 370 to the point, Siberia 778. They continue to fly as if in a vacuum. Only the light of the instruments reflected in the faces. Everything is according to plan. Everything is calm. But there is something alarming about this perfect silence. As if the air has become denser. Small raindrops are already starting to hit the glass. It's still a long way from landing, but somewhere ahead is a thunderstorm front, followed by Irkutsk. Shibanov listens to ATIS, an automatic weather report. Wind 280 for meters, visibility 3.5, light rain, temperature 11, wet strip. Got it. Chernik nods. Not for the first time. Outside, the sunset fades, and the cabin is filled with cold artificial light. The transition from clear skies to rain occurs almost imperceptibly. The plane enters the cloud area. Drops begin to flow down the glass, flashing in the reflection of the instruments. No thunder, no lightning, just the sound of rain, like a whisper. And somewhere behind that sound is a premonition. Light, elusive. What the pilots don't know yet is that in an hour they won't have to contend with the weather, but with a machine that will suddenly stop obeying them. But for now, calm down. Long minutes of perfect work. Siberia 778 is approaching Irkutsk, and the night is getting thicker. The rain is falling somewhere ahead, and below them there is darkness and the lights of sparse villages. The airliner is stable, but there is a hidden irony in this evenness. Everything is perfect inside the aircraft, but inside the system there is a compromise. The one that was adopted on Earth when the mechanics were in a hurry to get the board back into operation. A few days ago, the same Airbus landed in Irkutsk with a problem. The right thrust reverse did not work. At that time, the left one was still working properly, and the landing took place without incident. But during the inspection, it turned out that now the left reverse has also failed. This is serious for an airplane. Without reversals, braking falls on the wheels and spoilers, and if the lane is wet, the braking distance increases significantly. According to the rules, you cannot fly with both reversals not working. But the fleet is limited, the schedule is tight, and the plane is needed on the flight. The technicians found a solution. Remove the serviceable drive shaft from the left engine and install it on the right. The right reverse is now working. The left one is not. A mark was put on the case. The left reverse is deactivated. Formally, everything is according to the instructions. In practice, it's a risk. To understand why, you need to know how reverse works. When the aircraft touches the ground, the reverse flaps on the engines turn, redirecting the thrust flow forward. The air that normally pushes the plane forward now helps to stop it. This is especially important on a slippery lane where the tires lose traction. But there is only one working reverse on board the Siberia 778 on the right engine. This means that when landing, the thrust will be asymmetrical. On the one hand, the brake, on the other, just low throttle. All this requires a precise response from the commander. Millimeters of movement of the levers, and the plane will fly sideways. Shibanov knows about this. He had already flown with such a restriction and was coping. Chernik trusts him completely. They don't see the problem, just the feature. Well, again in one reverse? Chernik asks with a slight grin. It would be worse without both. The commander answers. The main thing is to keep on the axis and then the automation will help. And in this confidence lies the invisible crack from which the system's downfall will begin. So far, everything is going perfectly. The connection is stable, the pressure in the hydraulic lines is normal, and the autopilot is heading exactly along the route. But inside the machine there is a logic created by humans, and it does not know the word error. Each parameter is controlled by sensors, and each command passes through layers of electronics. Airbus checks whether the pilot is doing something wrong. Should help, but sometimes it turns into a trap. After a few hours, when Shibanov accidentally touches a nearby lever, the system will perceive this not as a human error, but as a command to take off. And it will start a chain that will be impossible to stop. But now it's night, steady flight, raindrops on the glass. Siberia 778 is descending towards Irkutsk, and confidence still reigns on board. Experience, order, discipline. Until that one reverse comes into play, the only chance and the only threat at the same time. 22:10 Irkutsk time. On the instrument screens, the green line of the route goes down. The aircraft passes the control point expanse and begins a smooth descent. The lights dim in the cockpit, and only the soft glow of the screens is reflected in the pilots' faces. Siberia 778 go down to 5,700. 5,700, accepted. The autopilot gently puts the liner into a descent. The air behind the glass becomes denser. Clouds begin to flicker. The hum of the engines changes slightly. The sound becomes deeper. In the cabin, the flight attendants check the seatbelts and ask passengers to lift the seatbacks. People obediently fix the straps, not knowing that there is wet blackness behind the portholes, and ahead is a rain front that envelopes Irkutsk. The pilots are listening to the latest ATIS. The voice of the automation sounds calm, but it already feels the moist cold of the earth. The wind is 270 meters, visibility is 3.5 kilometers. The lower limit of the clouds is 190 meters. The strip is wet. Well, it's raining again, Chernik chuckles. This is Irkutsk, it's never dry here, Shibanov replies, and they both laugh softly. Routine, joke, calmness. Everything is under control, that's exactly the danger. They switch to the Irkutsk approach frequency. Siberia 778, Razdali span, 5,700. Accepted. Come down 2,100. 210, Siberia 778. The plane gently dives below the clouds. There are lights flashing behind the glass, mountains, fog, and pools of light below them. The rain begins to patter on the paneling, subtly, almost musically. Attention in the cockpit. Every device and every sound is monitored automatically. The commander and co-pilot work as one unit without words, only short confirmations. 20 flaps. There is. The speed is stable. The runway's headlights begin to shine down below. The glide path is like a thread leading to the ground. On long-range drive, the aircraft runs exactly along the axis. Siberia 778, I allow landing. Landing cleared, 778. The chassis is released. There is a slight hum of hydraulics in the cabin, the click of locks. Landing checklist, says Chernik. Completed, Shibanov replies. At an altitude of 240 meters, they pass the distant lighthouse. The dispatcher reports. Removal 15, you are holding the course. Siberia 778, descending, landing gear released, ready for landing. Raindrops run down the glass, spotlights illuminate the lane ahead. Everything looks perfect. There is only a slight crosswind, but for an experienced crew, this is not a problem. Shibanov takes control. Autopilot is off. Autotrag off. The plane listens softly. Feels like it's the final chord. They run exactly along the axis. The height is 105 meters. The speed is 257 kilometers per hour. We're going by height, says Chernik. For miles away, everything is fine. Touch. The feeling of flying instantly goes out. Now only the landing gear, brakes, concrete under the wings. Shibanov switches the right reverse to maximum mode. The left one is not touched, it does not work. The plane is slowing down, everything is going according to plan. And at that moment, there was a barely noticeable movement of the hand. The commander pushes the right lever forward, removing the reverse, but his palm catches the next lever. The left engine receives a command to increase thrust. The machine does not understand the error. It's an order to her. The left engine is entering takeoff mode. Everything happens quietly. No sound, no alarm. Just a slight jolt, which the pilots don't even notice at first. A warning lights up on the panel. Takeoff config. I can't believe they've just landed. And the computer says they're taking off. Chernik turns off the alarm, deciding that this is a malfunction. The plane continues to run on wet concrete. The speed is 185, then 190. While they think they're just slowing down for a long time, the airliner stops slowing down. And after a few seconds, it starts to accelerate. The wheels are already on concrete, but there is almost no feeling of landing. Everything is too soft, perfect. Shibanov is sure. This is another exact job, he has hundreds of them. The right reverse is on, the plane is slowing down, everything is under control. The first seconds are in absolute order. Thrust goes into negative territory. The values on the instruments are even. But after a moment, the rhythm breaks. When the commander returns the reverse lever to neutral, his palm touches the next one. This movement is millimeter long, unconscious. The left engine, previously in low gas, suddenly receives a command to increase power. The numbers are growing on the scoreboard. First 40%, then 50-60. The plane stops braking. What the? Asks Chernik in surprise. Shibanov looks at the screen, the revs are increasing, but the right thrust is falling. Instead of balance, there is a skew. The A310 starts to drive sideways, as if someone is pulling on the wing. Then a beep sounds. The one they used to hear only on takeoff. Sonorous, intrusive, ear-splitting. Takeoff configuration warning. The plane thinks that they are going to take off again. There is instant confusion in the cockpit. Why did the takeoff signal go off? The devil knows. Chernik replies and turns off the alarm. He's sure it's an electronic error. Sensor failure. But the system is not mistaken. The left engine has already gone beyond the limit set for landing. The plane is accelerating. At a speed of 185 kilometers per hour, the automation switches off the interceptors, the very panels on the wings that help to brake. Without them, the aerodynamic drag drops, and the auto-braking system stops working. Now only the pedals under the pilot's feet are braking, but they are powerless against the growing pull from the left. The plane is no longer listening. Why doesn't it slow down? Shibanov's shout breaks through the steady hum of the cabin. The turnover is growing, replies Chernik. Reverse again. He won't get up. Why are we rolling out? I don't know. Everything happens in seconds. The plane is racing through wet concrete at a speed already over 180. There is a fence at the end of the lane with buildings and garages behind it. Shibanov is trying to straighten the course. The levers tremble in my hands. The pedals stubbornly resist. The car pulls to the right, then to the left, then to the right again. There's silence in the headphones. The dispatcher thinks they're already at the taxiway. No one understands that the airliner is still flying, just not in the air, but on the ground. Turn off the engines, Shibanov shouts, but Black freezes. There's confusion in his eyes. The brain can't keep up with what's happening. The next moment, the concrete strip ends. The landing gear jumps on the edge, and the heavy body flies out of the airfield. A second and a blow. Flame. Siberia 778 is no longer moving. The first beat sounds muffled, as if someone has hit a giant drum with all their might. The hull is shaking. The seats are crumpling. There is a flash of light in the cabin. Sky, earth, concrete, everything is mixed up in an instant. The Airbus takes off from the runway at a speed of about 180 kilometers per hour. The left engine is still pulling forward, as if trying to break free from an invisible grip. The plane slides through wet grass, lurches, wheels explode dirt, sparks fly from under the fuselage. My gosh! Turn off the engines! Shibanov's shout breaks the silence of the cabin. There is no response. Chernik froze, hands on the panel, eyes in the screens where the green indicators are still lit. The system is sure that this is takeoff. The next blow is stronger. The airliner breaks through the concrete fence of the airport. The left wing breaks, metal bends, and fuel immediately flares up. Flames burst through the rain. Yellow, ragged, alive. Smoke comes out of the tail in a second, and then the fire reaches the cabin. The passengers are in shock. Darkness, screams, the sound of metal. Somewhere in the middle of the fuselage is a torn floor, fallen seats, luggage, masks on their faces. Everything that was calm a minute ago has turned into chaos. But in the midst of this chaos, there are those who act. 22-year-old flight attendant Victoria Silberstein woke up under a pile of chairs. There are flames nearby, and above her is the sound of a collapsing ceiling. She unbuckles her seatbelts and makes her way to the emergency hatch above the wing. The handle is hot, but she pulls it all the way. A click. The hatch opens. A stream of fresh air rushes in. Over here! Stop it! She screams. Hurry up! Over here! The passengers climb out one by one, clinging to the hull. Rain turns into steam when it falls on metal, heated by a flame. 20 people come out of the hatch. The last one is Victoria. At the back, flight attendant Andrei Dyakonov opens another exit. The flames are already close, but he continues to pull people out. According to the instructions last, he stays until everyone who can be saved leaves his sector. Outside, the roar of fire, sirens. The first fire trucks are already at the entrance, but the flames are bursting above the roof of the plane. Fuel is pouring out of the punctured tanks. The rain does not help. It only makes the smoke thicker. Where a few minutes ago there was order and control, now there is only chaos, fire, and water. The flame hums like an engine. The plane disappears in it. The voices disappear. But among this darkness, there are those who survived, who were able to get out. People standing on the wet ground turn to what was once their home in the sky. Her eyes are red, her clothes are burned, and her hands are shaking. They don't understand how it happened. Everything happened too fast. They landed, and 30 seconds later they lost everything. The flame hums like it's alive. It licks off the rain, devours metal, and rises tens of meters into the air. Against the background of the black sky, the light from the burning Airbus is visible for several kilometers. An orange flash flickers over Irkutsk, like a sudden unscheduled dawn. Firefighters arrive at the scene a minute after the impact. But the road to the plane is a maze of debris, concrete slabs, and garages that the liner demolished during the rollout. Their headlights pick out skewed gates, mangled cars, smoke, and ash from the darkness. The radio is silent. No one knows yet what exactly happened. As they get closer, it becomes clear the liner is broken almost in half. The nose is completely destroyed. The wing is on fire. The fuselage is cracking from the heat. Everything is red inside from the flame and light. Firefighters spray foam on the wreckage, but the fire does not go away immediately. The temperature is such that even water turns into steam without touching the ground. At the other end of the destroyed hull, flight attendant Victoria Silberstein sits on the wet ground, choking on smoke. Nearby are the people she brought out. There are 20 of them. Everyone is alive. The fire is reflected in the eyes, and no one says a word. There is only a hoarse cough and the sound of rain. She turns around, the plane is still on fire. Somewhere inside, her colleagues, the commander, and the co-pilot remained. Those who were the voices in the headset, who were joking before the descent. Now there's only the roar of fire and falling pieces of hull. On the opposite side, the firefighters see a man in uniform. This is Steward Andrei Dyakonov. They find him at the emergency exit, on the floor, 2 steps from the open door. Behind it are the footprints of the passengers he managed to take out. He did everything according to the instructions. Until the end. The cars of the Ministry of Emergency Situations arrive one after another. Doctors are treating the injured. The rain is intensifying, mixing with foam, turning everything around into a mess of clay, fuel, and ashes. There is chaos on the spot, but it is different, controlled. People are running with stretchers, lights are flashing, the first reports are on the radio. Flight 778, rolling off the runway. Fire. The evacuation is underway. By dawn, only a skeleton remains of the plane. Black, glistening with moisture, with slits in the windows through which the sky is now visible. The fire has been extinguished. Silence covers everything. Only the rustle of rain and the occasional crackle of metal cooling after a flame. Rescuers are collecting documents, passports, fragments of devices. On each piece, the paint Siberia is now pale as ash. Irkutsk is waking up. People learn the news from short messages on the radio. Flight Moscow, Irkutsk, Airbus A310. There was an incident during landing. No one knows the scale yet. Only later, closer to morning, it will become clear. It's not just a rollout. This is a disaster. But at this moment, there is silence. There was only rain, wet concrete, and survivors sitting in confusion next to what had been an airplane the night before. They are silent. Each of them looks into the fire, which has already died out, but has not gone out of his eyes. Morning. Gray dawn over Irkutsk. The air is saturated with burning. The rain does not stop. It flows down the melted pieces of metal, over the black ruins of garages, along the concrete strip where the landing lights shone yesterday. Investigators, rescuers, and the military are at the crash site. Everything around us resembles a huge wound on the ground. Torn asphalt, fragments of wings, pieces of the cabin, which now look like fragments of some alien technology. No one speaks loudly. Even the sound of footsteps is muffled by the wet earth. Photographers record every meter. The labels on the map are impact point, rupture point, and engine fragments. There is silence between them. Only the rustle of rain on the helmets and short commands. Do not touch. Fix the temperature. Here we found part of the panel. Smells of kerosene and smoke. There is a plate with the tail number on the concrete slab. The one that was under the cabin. It is removed carefully, as if it were a memory, not metal. The first shots appear on the news by 8 in the morning. The presenters speak cautiously. An incident occurred in Irkutsk during the landing of a Sibir airline plane. Passengers are being evacuated. Then, clarification, there are victims, and only by evening the country will know the whole truth. There's a shock in the city. People come to the airport, bring flowers and candles. Flight 778 is still listed on the departure board as arrived, but no one believes their eyes. Investigators of the Interstate Aviation Committee begin work in a few hours. Flight recorders, black boxes, are found on the wreckage. They're charred, but the hull is intact. These 2 devices are now the only witnesses to what happened between the touch and the fire. The recording is played frame by frame in the laboratory. A sound, a rustle, commands, then a take-off signal. Take-off config. 10 seconds of silence. Then the phrase, "Why are we rolling out?" And a sharp blow. These 10 seconds will become the focus of the investigation. Everything is in them: error, automation, the human factor, and software logic. Experts note that the left engine actually entered takeoff mode after landing. The reason is the lever movement detected by the system. But it is impossible to prove what exactly caused this movement. An accident or a malfunction. The report is getting thicker by the hour. Points, diagrams, indications of technicians. In the reverse diagram, a line is marked in red, from the engine to the hydraulic drive, which was replaced a few days earlier. Perhaps this was the starting point of the whole chain. By the evening of July 10th, the wreckage begins to be removed. The fire trucks are the last to leave. A void remains in place, an uneven trail leading from the strip to the destroyed buildings. This strip is no longer just concrete. It is a trace of human decisions, mistakes, and courage. And it's raining over Irkutsk again. Fine, uniform. It was as if the weather itself had decided to wash away the night in which the sky had stopped obeying man. The report folders are growing one by one. The MAC stamp is on the covers. The Interstate Aviation Committee starts work immediately after the recorders are recovered. The commission is divided into groups: flight operations, technical condition, crew psychophysiology, airline documentation. Each of these sections is a small world where they are looking for an answer to the same question. Why did a plane that had already landed suddenly decide to take off back? First, everything seems obvious. In the transcript, you can hear how the commander himself increases the thrust of the left engine. The version is simple: the human factor, involuntary movement of the hand, error under pressure. But the deeper the experts delve into the data, the less the logic converges. The engine didn't just increase thrust, it kept it steady, as if it had received a clear command from a computer. And the interceptors and brakes turned off exactly at the moment when the system decided that the liner was in takeoff mode. The paradox. The plane braked steadily until automation intervened, believing that the pilots had made a mistake. A new word appears in the reports: logical software error. A bus is an airplane where everything is connected electronically. Even the reverse lever does not act directly, it sends a signal through a computer. And if this signal gets into the wrong context, the system performs what it considers safe. But in reality, it was no longer safe. Experts are arguing. Some claim that the pilot accidentally pushed the left lever. Everything else is a consequence. Others say that automation should not have disabled braking at speeds below 200. This is a glitch, not a human error. There is even a phrase in the transcript of the meeting: the plane had no right to believe that it was taking off when its landing gear and flaps were released for landing. A memorial service is being held in Irkutsk against the background of technical debates. On this day, the relatives of the victims see photos from the site for the first time: broken structures, twisted chairs. And at that moment, the question why ceases to be technical. It becomes personal. On April 19, 2007, the IAC publishes the final report. It says, "The cause of the disaster was the erroneous and uncontrolled actions of the crew during thrust control after landing." But inside the report, there are dozens of notes and footnotes hinting that it's not that simple. A year later, in 2008, the investigation was resumed. Now the criminal department is the East Siberian Department of Transport. Investigators are demanding new expertise, interviewing Airbus technicians, programmers, and engineers. And soon another formulation appears. The disaster could have been caused by abnormal operation of the control systems, their design flaws and errors in the logic of the onboard computer. What started as a simple human error is gradually turning into a story about the imperfection of machines, about how an algorithm created for security played against those who controlled it. But it's impossible to prove it. The recorders record the actions, but not the reason why the hand went there. There is no video from the cockpit, no direct evidence. The investigators stop on the verge of guessing. In 2009, the case was reopened and closed again. The conclusion is final. The most likely reason was the actions of the crew commander, and the phrase that puts an end to it: the criminal prosecution has been terminated due to the death of the crew members. But for experts, the point is never set. Even today, international forums are discussing how the Airbus A310 could have confused landing with takeoff. The machine, created to save from mistakes, has become a part of them. Years have passed. The place where the plane once burned is now a flat area, concrete, frozen in scars. Nearby is a modest memorial sign, a metal wing raised into the sky and a nameplate: One of the locals says that on rainy nights it still smells of kerosene. People come here every July. Those who survived. The relatives of those who did not return. Rescuers who remember the heat of that night. No one says big words, they just stay silent. Someone is laying flowers. Someone is quietly touching the metal. The rain drips down the plaque, as if time itself erases the pain, but not the memory. The crew is among the names. Sergei Shibanov, Vladimir Chernik, Andrei Dyakonov, Victoria Silberstein. And if you look at these lines not as a list, but as a story, it becomes clear that they did everything they could. Every single one until the last second. Passengers who survived recall a strange feeling before boarding. Calmness, as if nothing could go wrong. Then, a moment of light and darkness. Many never returned to flying. Others, on the contrary, now sit at the porthole to see the sky. Because fear has given way to respect. This story was a signal for aviation. After the crash, the Airbus instructions were changed. Logical algorithms have been refined. Procedures for actions with asymmetric thrust have been redesigned. Now every pilot training course contains an Irkutsk 2006 lesson. The one where one accident turned into a systemic problem. And yet this story is not based on technology. There's a man in it. Shibanov, a confident commander who tried to figure out what was going on until the end. Black, whose voice is the last to be heard in the transcript. Flight attendants who rescued people when the plane was already on fire. And 78 passengers who managed to get out of the flames and rain. Their memory is not only in the monument. She is on every flight that lands on a wet runway at night. In every movement of the pilot's hand, checking the levers before touching. There is an engineer in every decision who chooses a safe solution rather than a simple one. Because aviation is not just about technology. This is trust. And even if sometimes it comes at too high a price, it remains the main thing that holds the sky. It's raining again in Irkutsk in the evening. The water gently taps on the metal wing of the monument, reflecting the lights of the city. Silence just drops. And the sky is as gray as the day Flight 778 set off from Moscow, not knowing what would become history.